Talk with my hands, so try not to do too much of that. So some of you guys have probably called our call center or called one of our service managers, or maybe you've talked to somebody working with a computer, and they tell you to cycle power to try to solve the problem, right? Probably everybody's probably heard that term, cycle power, or reboot your computer. There's actually an engineering way. There's something about that, and I'm not much of an engineer, I'm an agronomist. But what it actually does is it clears the system. So in our presentation today, that's what I want you to kind of do is you kind of had your assumptions of what precision ag is and the strategies you should have. Think about what we're going to talk about. Just let it clear the system a little bit and see what things you could be doing differently that you may not be doing today. So my name is Jeff Barnes. I'm a precision ag manager for Greenway. I have my PhD from the University of Arkansas in agronomy. So I'm an agronomist by training, so I'm not the best tech guy in the world. I do my best. I got two pretty good tech guys that are kind of going to be joining me. Ryan Moore, go ahead.
All right, so yeah, my name's Ryan Moore. I'm the Precision Ag Services Manager for Greenway Equipment, Agronomy Services. A lot of things that we're going to be talking about today are something that I work with on a day-to-day basis around data. I have roughly 15 years of precision ag experience, including college. I do have 3 degrees, ranging from precision ag and 2 in agronomy. From Mississippi State, I have a bachelor's. Murray State, I have a master's degree, and so forth. So, and also have a background in commercial application. So your input provider side, I have good experience and background from that side.
Jared?
All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Jared Field. I joined Greenway about 10 months ago, so fairly new to the team. But before that, had 7 years experience with the crop retail business, and straight out of college, I was in 2 years in with the specialty produce guys. So a lot of crop business. I'm here with Greenway doing the commercial ag sales, so dealing with a lot of co-ops, commercial applicators. Those guys, working with them and trying to help them develop a strategy to work with you guys better on their farm with green equipment. So looking forward to working a lot alongside with them.
So these guys are very, very good at what they do. They're very knowledgeable about precision ag. Otherwise, the University of Arkansas graduate would not have hired 2 Mississippi State graduates. So that was one of the things that we did kind of come up with. So what is precision ag? And there's probably I'm not sure how many people are in the room. There's probably a lot of different opinions about what that is right now. But if you go back, precision ag really started roughly around 20 years ago. About 1995 was when we start seeing stuff for soil sampling, and a little bit after that there was the yield monitor sensors. So what is precision ag? Some people would define it as equipment. It's all about equipment. It's about hardware. It's about GPS. It's about things like ExactApply sprayers or ExactEmerge on planters. It's all about the equipment side of it. Okay. Others that have more of a soils background would argue that it's about the 4 R's: right place, right rate, right timing, and right product. And that's a pretty valid argument too. Some people would just say it's all about variable rate applications. Variable rate planting, variable rate nitrogen, whatever it is, everything should be about variable rate. That's what precision ag is. This was a relatively new one, decision ag, which is about data collection, data analysis, and data application, or basically doing something with the data. That's a little bit of a newer term. Saw this one on a slide at a meeting with John Deere and decided to randomly steal it, but it's a crossroads of agronomy, technology, and economics. I kind of like this one, because if it doesn't have an economic basis for it, why are you making a change on your farm if it's not something that's going to be good for the crop? It has to have an economic basis, but there is technology related as well. This is Jeff Barnes, Jared, and Ryan Moore's definition. It's really a very farm-specific strategy for you to be more efficient, productive, and profitable. And it does tie in agronomy, technology, and economics. But it takes all 3 of those, but it's really about a strategy that works for your operation. So what is your farm's precision ag strategy? If I ask you that, would you be able to define what that really is, long-term? What's your long-term strategy that you're trying to get out of precision ag? So, improvements are possible without data. If I sit here with the two richest men in the world, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and I said, I need your help trying to figure out how to improve my business, my farm. And I show them that information, they're going to basically say, okay, you don't have enough information for me to help you. So I'll go a little bit deeper. Say, all right, so I have 100 fields, 4,600 acres, got about 3.7 in income, 3.7 in expenses, I made about 50,000 in profit. Their next response is going to be, that's nice, you still haven't shown me anything that has enough volume and depth for me to help you improve. You show me that you probably don't have enough. Down until the last customer leaves, so you're more than welcome to stay as long as you want, ask the questions that you need, but there will be shuttle services to get you back to your vehicle with the parking situation and everything. With that, I'll let you guys get back to it.
As Jeff said, we're going to talk about water management and what Precision Ag can do to help in your water management strategy. I'm Tyler Metters. I'm the Region 3 Precision Ag Advisor for Greenway. Up here with me is Jeremy Bullington. He's a Precision Ag Support Center Manager. And Alex is my counterpart up in Region 2. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm not going to pull any punches, try to get any cliffhangers with you guys. What can Precision Ag do to help? It can reduce or eliminate water-caused yield variability. So we saw earlier what yield variability does. We know it costs us money. And that's kind of where we're going to be a little bit different. I feel like in this presentation, probably some of y'all have sat through. A lot of those presentations talk about conserving groundwater, which is great. It's important. Just talking about down in my neck of the woods, pretty scarce with groundwater. And another one is talking about reducing pumping costs. But if we're going to save our way to prosperity, probably a few better places we can start than pumping cost. Based off U of A budget, they put irrigation costs somewhere around 6% of a furrow irrigated crop budget. So, I think the big thing to take away from this is we're really targeting eliminating that yield variability because our inputs can only do so much until we fix that water problem. So why is minimizing that water variability so important? Like Jamie said earlier, we want to make sure all that money we spend on that field goes to the plant, not the ditch, not to the soil. We want to get it to the plant. And our goal is to take our field from this one on the lower left that y'all seen a couple times today and eliminate all that variability, or most of that variability, and take it to a very efficient field. So we talked about having 46 fields that didn't make money this year. When we really dove into that, pulled out 100 random fields, different than Barnes's, and 59 of those fields actually had variability caused by water damage. And when we say variability caused by water damage, we're not talking about a 0.2 of an acre hole they had to push water through to get it to go on down the road. We're talking about 10% of that field's total acreage was 10% or more below average. So if we're talking about our crop average from Greenway data this year, about 230 bushel corn on an average size field of 50 acres, that's a minimum lick of $500. And it really went up from there. That's be a pretty minor fee we're taking on there. Most of you guys can relate to that. Y'all know water is a big cause of variability. I heard a guy talking earlier in the week. He put one of the first kilometers on his cotton picker, and he said he was excited. He was going to tackle all these fertility issues. He was going to tackle, pH issues. Got to looking at yield maps, and it was all drainage. He said kind of let the air out of the sails a little bit and let him know he had a lot of work to do on field leveling still, on ditching still, on irrigation efficiency still. You guys can probably relate. You have that one field that you either say, thank God it's in rice next year and I get to put levees on it, or you say, man, I got to put poly pipe all across that thing and push water down the road. And the bottom line is, water is probably robbing from your bottom line. On some part of your farm, you probably have at least one field where water's hurting you.
All right, so one of the things when we look at yield data, a lot of times we look specifically at yield. All right, so when we look at yield, do we know what that yield relates to? So on the screen behind me, one of the things you're seeing is up here we've got an NDVI image of the field. So a lot of times when we talk about imagery, people go, what does that have to do with water? How does that relate? Well, a lot of times when we look at an NDVI image, what's causing that failure in that field. Could be something as simple as poor drainage or excessive water. That NDVI image is able to show us that, and we're able to correlate that in season to an actual crop loss. And as you look across the yield map, you start to see where we saw like poor performing in NDVI. You can see the same thing in our surface, and then the same thing in our zone mapping. Now let's take that a step farther. So now, can we correlate an NDVI image with a elevation map with a yield map? Now, this is something that most people would never have thought. Can you correlate NDVI strictly with elevation? What we're showing here is using terracotta, we're actually able to put in the depression map, take that depression map and correlate it back to a yield map and correlate to our NDVI. So we're able to see 3 different types of maps give us the exact same information. So when people ask, how do I know if I have a water problem? This is how you know if you have a water problem. Because you're able to see in season, this is what's happening according to the imagery. The yield data shows that I'm having a failure, and our elevation map shows we're having poor drainage. So when people say, I don't have a problem, or my problem is not drainage, or my problem is not water, when I can show them a map like this, mine start changing very, very rapidly.
So today we kind of broke this down. We're going to talk about some of the basic things in water management that may still be holding us up from achieving that, less than 10% yield variability across the field. In terms of fundamental water management, but we're going to be looking at drainage, furrow irrigation, and land forming. So for drainage, Alex is going to walk you through RTK line placement for polypipe lines and drainage ditches. I'm going to talk about computerized hole selection for furrow irrigation, and Jeremy's going to walk you through multi-fit land forming. And something to keep in the back of your mind on your farm is water managed to optimize yield, or as complacency may be creeping in on some of those problem areas. You've had this draw that you just kind of fell victim to because you've been here, it's been on that land as long as you have, so now you just kind of accept, maybe I'm going to have drowned out 10 acres on that field. So hopefully we can show you some ways to improve that as you think about those things. Tools we're going to use, I'm going to focus on pipe planner today. We have a lot of case studies with pipe planner. Very easy program to use. It's free to operate for farmers. Alex is going to talk about Terra design and how we use that for RTK line placement. Another thing is Terra drains. How many of you guys have a My John Deere account? If you put any data into the operations center, you can go in and use Terra drains for free and see flow paths on your field and see that elevation map, and you can create auto track drain path lines in the operations center. Jeremy's going to talk about terracotta designs and using those with iGrade. So some of you guys from Missouri, I think I heard y'all saying, show me. Best way to tell you what Precision Ag can do to help is tell you what it did do to help. Greenway's in a unique position that we can have some of these services, we can see it from start to finish. We have yield maps too, guys allow us to use as examples. So big demonstration today is we used on-farm existing technology or free technology with the big one there. Minimize water-induced field variability. Really concentrate on the cost effectiveness, making more bushels to make you more money because you're already spending all those inputs. But until we fix that water issue, a lot of time our fungicides, foliars, other things aren't going to pay. So I'm going to jump right into pipe planter. This is the field we designed. It's 89 acres, furrow irrigated, rice and soybean rotation. The red lines you can see along the northern portion of the field, that's one polypipe line. Then along the western border, you can see in year 2 they put a little spur out there. Why did they have to put that spur out there? Well, using Terra design, we can put these natural flow paths in, and you can see all those black lines are flow paths. Rows run north and south in this field. Anytime you see a flow path perpendicular to row, we know we got an issue. Water's not going to push right there. So we know we need to run some poly pipe down through there. We're just going to have a problem. And it shows up really well on this yield map. I put it was planted April 30th in here because I didn't want y'all to accuse me of cherry picking data when I show you this next slide. But it yielded 44 bushel to the acre. 42% of that field was below average. So in that low zone, the yield on this field was 36 bushel. So he took an 8 bushel lick across almost half of that field. We're talking 35, 40 acres. When you do any kind of Greenway advanced harvest service, you've seen our potential revenue figure before, and that's how much money he missed out on by that low zone not yielding what the average of the field did. It's about $3,300. So that's money he spent on that field. So most of you guys probably aren't variable rating by furrow irrigation zones. Under a pivot versus outside of a pivot, you may be doing something like that. when we go in to analyze this data, you can see that ditch path right there. So that was a big drain for that field. Water got in that drain and didn't come out. And nothing on the south side of that watered very well. So we had a lot of damage due to that one drain. Here's the year 2 yield map, quite a bit of difference. It's planted June 10th, so quite a bit later, almost a month later. One thing, there's plenty of research to show now when we get into mid to late May soybean planting dates, we start to lose about 1% of the maximum yield per day. So there was a yield penalty 2 planting day on this field. Average yield was still 51 bushels to the acre, so we increased it by 7 bushel. Variability shrank to 14%, and potential revenue went down to $1,700, so we almost halved it. You can see the only variability we really have on this field is a drain, and there was a depression right there where water wouldn't go all the way off the field. So what does that mean? We improved his water distribution. We minimized that variability we were talking about. So the other day I looked at rice and board prices when I was putting this together. Cash soybean price was $9.98 a bushel. So his break-even price on year 1 was $9.86. So he made $12 per bushel per acre, or 12 cents per bushel per acre, excuse me. Year 2, that break-even price went down to $8.62. So he had another $1.25 in pure profit going into his pocket just by implementing pipe planter and a tear design drain placement. So that's about $5,700 more profit just from that step alone. Doesn't take much time. Greenway can partner with you in that to do those services, or you can do it for free on your own.
All right. So here I'm going to talk about or tell you all a story of an instance that I ran into this past year with a customer talking about furrow versus levee irrigated soybeans. And I'm just kind of going to, like I said, tell you all the story of what happened, because I think that the story itself, like I said, speaks volumes. So first, I'd like to get into some of the background information on the farming operation in that specific field that I'll be talking about. Then I'm going to talk about what the farmer's goals were, and then we're going to talk about the challenge that was set by the individual's dad or the father in the farming operation there. And we're going to go over the tools that we use to get these goals accomplished, and talk about the results. So moving along here, this field, for today's talk, I'm just going to call this Field 1. It's 258 acres. Like I said, traditionally, this father-son operation would have used levees to water this field when they had it in soybeans. Again, like I said, it was a father-son operation. The son was who approached and spoke with me about wanting to see if there was a better way to water the field, and just a more efficient way to get that done. Dad was skeptical. Like I said, levee watering had always worked for him in the past, and they did try polypipe in the past before, and it was just a disaster. So now I'm going to kind of go over what exactly they had done in the past, and if you can see here in the image here, if I can get the clicker right, each one of those little white lines is the levee going across the field. Like I said, the total length of the levees that he was pulling in this field was 15 miles approximately, or 79,200 feet worth of levees. So, and when you convert that over into acres, each year he was cutting down 18.18 acres of that field, and that's a 258 acre field, and he had healthy soybeans, which he had bought the seed for, he had bought the fertilizer for, he had paid for the water expenses, and put everything into them. They were healthy, and they would have produced beans, but instead he went out there and chopped them down so that he could water the other part of the field there. And that equates into 7% roughly of that field that was actually being taken out of production. So again, now I'm going to kind of talk about the challenge that his dad had kind of put forth to us. So when the son had come and talked to me about wanting to figure out a better way to water the field, Dad had said he would be on board for this as long as we could show him a way that guaranteed he would make his money or more money in the first year. And so kind of thought about that for a little bit. And the easiest way that I could think of to get it across to Dad of how this would be beneficial and how it would make him money is to show him the acres that he would actually be getting back, that he was just not getting a crop off of. So that's basically what we did, is we took and we showed him this is what he's done in the past, and then we moved into our plans for using polypipe irrigation in the future. In our design that we set up, it's got 7 runs of polypipe, which y'all are probably thinking, ooh, that's a bunch of polypipe. And it is, but at the same time, he was driving a bunch of levees too. He was driving 15 miles of levees in that field. So his polypipes only cut down 1.69 acres of soybeans. So, like I said, that only requires 0.6% of the field to be taken out for production. Again, I know Tyler went over some of this with y'all guys, but the map I know looks pretty busy up there. Like I said, you can see here these lines are the levees or the contour lines. These are on 4/10, so as you can see, this is quite a hilly field. And like I said, the flow paths are also in this map here, which show the direction that the water wants to drain. So now we're kind of going to go over the results that this farmer was able to achieve by actually implementing that design. Like I said, after we showed those plans to Dad and showed him what he had been doing in the past, and he actually didn't even realize he was taking up that much of his field. And once he did, like I said, he said, hey, I'm on board, let's give it a shot. So this first image over here, satellite, when he used levees, I don't know if y'all can see this very well, but behind it I did have the levees put in there. I know on the screen there's white, and they're white levees. But anyway, there's a strong correlation between where the levees are most closely laid in the field and where the red and yellow less production was coming from in that field. And then the other image is actually a satellite image that was taken after we ran the polypipe lines and did the row irrigation. And one thing I do want to mention before, and y'all can see it on the map plain as day, I'm sure, is that even, we got these results even though that he had a bunch of rain right after planting, and the bottom part of that field completely drowned out. He had made an attempt to replant, and it rained another 3 inches after he replanted. So he never got back in after that replant. But so you can see he was able to achieve these, some of these results. Keep that in mind as we're going over the results. So this first field, like I said, when he was using levees, he had a 42 bushel per acre average. That was 10,836 bushels, or roughly $108,000 that he was getting in revenue off that field. And when we moved over to watering with polypipe and using, like I said, RTK to place those poly lines and drainage ditches, he was able to cut 56 bushels. And you can see how that directly increased his profits there. So he had ended up with $139.72 an acre increase. So that was pretty significant for him. And like I said, he had made some comments to me about actually, how much he liked working with us and how much he liked participating in this. And he had said that it took a little bit of money up front, but it more than made its money back. Like I said, in just one field. And I mean, this one field right here basically paid for all the other acres that he put in the program this year. So, like I said, he was able to get half his farm done for one field, so it was pretty impressive. Also, he said that during August, when everybody else was out running around with their levee plow and their tractors up and down the highway, that he had his pump set and he had his wells He was just basically turning wells on and off is all he was doing. So it made for, gave him a lot more time where he could actually get out in his crop and he could, inspect for insects or disease, which led to increased benefits in other crops, not just in this field here. He was able to be a better farmer because he was making it easier on himself. So, again, that's just some of the things to think about. And like I said, I hope today I was able to kind of go over, like I said, some of the background information. And again, the tools that we use to gather this information, these images were coming from, the satellite images were coming from MavRx, which I'm sure you all saw the booth that we had outside there. And like I said, we used pipe liner and terracotta to get the RTK elevation to set the poly lines and irrigation drainage paths. So like I said,
Was that flat planted or bedded?
that was bedded. Yeah, it was bedded on 60-inch beds.
Anybody else have any questions?
Any questions?
So was there any dirt that was actually moved on that field, or was it just
There was
found
not.
the ridges?
No, sir. Like I said, there was no dirt moved, other than, like I said, we had installed some drainage ditches. Like I said, and as you can see, 15 inches of rain, in 2 days, there's not much you can do, even with ditches, to get it off there with that drastic elevation change. But again, that was only dirt that was moved out there. The only thing that he did different was actually, planted on rows and roller versus levee irrigation.
So did you have a bunch of different row directions coming off of each one of the?
No, sir. We were able to use terracotta to go in and pick a row direction that actually lined up for the whole field, and it would accomplish, with him just going in one path. Anything else?
All right, well, let's visit for just a few minutes on some of the benefits of land farming. We talk about land farming. There's lots of different options for ways to do it. One of the things we're going to focus on today is telling you specifically what multi-fit brings to the table and how it's different from a best fit type operation. Most of you at some point in time have either moved dirt or seen dirt being moved. So the benefits of it are pretty substantial. We know right off the bat, getting that uniform moisture all throughout the soil profile, one of the biggest things that land farming brings to the table. The top of the field has just as much water as the bottom of the field. We get that even absorption rate. That's good for two things. One, getting herbicides activated. Two, making sure the crop comes up uniform. Because uniform crop ultimately is what we're trying to get to. Everybody right now, if you have a field, you have a good part of the field and you have a bad part of the field. What I really want is the whole field to be average. And what I want to do is drive that average up. Having a good part and a bad part is hard on pretty much everything about the farming operation. Getting it as uniform as possible is always our goal. As far as decreasing input costs, land farming always gives us the ability to use less water. When we get into a situation where water is a limiting factor, whereas with most farmers, water is a limiting factor on some shape, form, or fashion, whether it be limiting to get it on or limiting to get it off. And from an increased land valuation, everybody knows if you've ever bought ground, is it cheap to buy ground that's been land farmed? Once somebody's dumped money into it, they're making an expectation to get the money back out. If you own ground and you rent it out, you're able to command a higher lease price, a higher rental price, just simply because your ground should be worth more because it's been terraformed. All right, so let's talk briefly about terracotta and what terracotta actually does. So raise your hand if you've ever heard of terracotta. All right, if everybody doesn't, raise your hand. I got a booth for you down there so you can go visit with me. So if you don't know what terracotta is, the purpose of it is it's going to reshape the surface of the field to optimize water management. One of the things that it brings to the table for John Deere is it adds that cut field map that we don't have through iGrade. The other thing it does give us some advanced analysis using not only iGrade, but the John Deere Operations Center. So we can use information that's coming in from the field and feed that into terracotta to improve our landform designs. So when you look at the field here, we see before leveling, we've got our hills out here, we've got our high points, we've got our low points. So do we always make our best yield on the high point of the field? Not always. Sometimes the high point, think of like a rice field. The high point of the field a lot of times is our lowest producing because it's not getting watered effectively. In a soybean field, you could see just the inverse. The low part could be the good part or the bad part. After leveling, we get good even flow. Now, one of the things that terracotta does that we can't really do with anything else is it provides that multi-fit operation. So what is the biggest difference between multi-fit and best fit? All right, so in best fit, ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to have a straight grade. So everybody that grows rice, raise your hands, Do you like straight levees? All right, everybody likes straight levees. What's the detriment to a field that's been straight graded? Are there some detriments? You can shake your head, yes, I know there is. Do you have yield loss where a heavy cut is? Is it significant? Is there ways to combat it? You can. Lots of things you can do to it. Are all those input costs free? How long does it take to recoup your yields from a heavy cut? I've got customers that cut fields 10 years ago. You can still tell exactly where the cut is to this day. Now, is that something we can fix? There's lots of variable rate applications. There's lots of things we can do to help with that problem. But are we actually making the problem go away, or are we just putting a Band-Aid on it? A lot of times with our customers, we talk about straight grading. We know that we're putting a Band-Aid on a situation that may not be fixable. All right, so that brings me to the point of talking about multi-fit. So how is multi-fit different from best fit? What does it actually do? All right, so what multi-fit does is allow us to make a shallower cut. So when we make that shallower cut from an agronomic standpoint, we're not removing as much topsoil. We're not getting into what most people refer to as the bad part of their soil. So if you're in the state of Arkansas or in the lower state of Missouri, how much topsoil do we have? How much organic matter do we have? Not a lot. Now, when you get up in the Midwest, what do they have? They've got a lot of organic matter, something that we don't have. So anytime that you start removing organic matter, removing topsoil, that's part of the thing where we're getting that yield detriment. Multi-fit is going to give us a shallower cut, and in essence, to give us a better return on our agronomics and better dirt delivery. All right, so we're going to look at a case study to specifically talk about how multi-fit works. So on the map you're seeing here, this is the elevation grade with levees drawn on 4/10. This was the original grade before any dirt moving was performed. Customer's complaint was he could only grow rice and beans on this field. He had no way to furrow irrigate. One of the things he wanted to do was be able to add in a corn rotation, add in a milo rotation, something else that he could get away from just having the levee water. Now, is that an issue with a lot of people? Yep. We got stuff that I just can't do it. Not an effective way to run polypipe on it. What we're able to look at here, and like I said, this is a 24-acre field, not a real big field. So the first thing we're going to look at is a best fit single plane design. So on the top, like I said previously, we saw so what our original map looks like. Up on the top, what you're going to see is our design map. So this is a straight grade going to 252 degrees, which is going to be to the southwest. Like I said, in that 24-acre field, our maximum cut is going to be 0.48 feet, so almost half a foot. Our total cut volume is 3,312 cubic yards, which brings to about 118 yards to the acre. Now, from people that move dirt, is that a lot of dirt to move? 3,000 yards is not a lot. Is that a real heavy cut? Half a foot's not a super heavy cut. All right, let's do the exact same field in a multi-fit design. Again, top, we're still moving at 252. Our parameters are now, we're going to set that at 0.075, which for a lot of customers will tell you is 0.075 is how much fall you have to make water flow downhill. Now, everybody's looking at me crazy. Water will flow downhill regardless. Water will start to puddle when you have a very low grade, though. It will go downhill, and it goes very slow. So a lot of times we set our bottom grade at 0.075, make sure we reduce that puddling. Our maximum float grade is 0.5. Now, when we look at our earthwork details, now our maximum cut is down to 0.24. So we actually cut our maximum cut in half. And as far as dirt work goes, we've now brought it down to 768 cubic yards total, which gets us down to 31 yards to the acre. Now, what does that mean from a customer standpoint? Is this something you can handle? Is this something you call a professional dirt mover to do? So here's the exact same maps. This is the cut fill map for best fit. This is the cut fill map for multi-fit. When you look at those maps, are they drastically different? There's a lot less cut in our multi-fit. So in the map that we're looking at, green is going to be what's on grade. So again, we're going to look at the dirt work for each one of them. On our best fit, our max cut is 0.48, and on the total yard, it's 137 yards per acre. And doing that direct comparison to our multi-fit, we got that down to half of it, so 0.24 on a max cut, and 768 yards total. All right, so we talk about what it takes to move dirt. So on our best fit design, you're looking at a machine something like this. Now, do we want you to buy a tractor like this? I would love for every person in here to walk out and want a tractor and a dirt pan just like that. Does everybody have one on their farm right now? A lot of people don't. And that's what scares people, is they go, you're talking about dirt moving, you're expecting me to buy $2 million worth of equipment just to move dirt with. All right, so when we look at the multi-fit design, we know that's a lot less dirt work. How many people have a tractor that looks more like that? For these small cuts, we're able to use a smaller tractor, a lower horsepower, something a lot of people in row crop agriculture, you're already going to have. Something you can simply find a dirt pan that fits your use pattern, something you can get into very simply, something that you can get in and out of quickly. When you get into a big dirt work operation, what does it require? It requires dry weather, which we got a lot of right now. Normally, do we have that this time of year? Not traditionally. So when you talk about a multi-fit design, you can get into the field quickly, move that dirt quickly, get it finished, get back into the next cropping season quickly. So the next thing we'll look at is another multi-fit case study. It's just a very simple study. So when you look at the grade here, at the top we see our high, at the bottom we see our low. What looks screwy about this field slightly though? What's going on right down there at the bottom? Where should your drain be on your field? Should be at the edge. What's going on right there? We actually have a high there. So how do these things happen? This field actually had dirt moved on it before that original map was made. How many times do you run a land plane across the field? What does it do when you get to the ends? You drag dirt out, you turn, some dirt spills out. And you do that year after year after year, what happens? Dirt that should be out in the field is now pulled up to the edge. So now what have you inadvertently done? You've taken where the ditch should be on the edge and you've moved it 100 foot out the field. So what happens? Now water puddles out in that spot. Is that an issue? And does that happen fairly regularly? But most people go, that's just part of farming. They just get around it. So one of the things we're seeing here is using this design. We're actually able to, this total move was 2,200 yards. Not exactly sure what the yards to acre was. It's a relatively small cut, something that a customer you'd be able to get into 2 or 3 days, get that ditch moved back to the edge of the field, make your irrigation efficiency much better, and get that water back off the field more effectively. Anybody have questions on that field? All right, we'll turn it back over to Tyler.
So earlier today, we heard Barnes talking about precision to decision, kind of a term that's come about more recently, but kind of how does that look? What do we do with that? And the big thing with that is data beyond the averages. If you're looking at scale tickets, you're getting an average yield for a farm, a field, however far you break that down. Some guys get a yield map, and they see that average yield on it. That's what they turn into landlords. That's what they use them for. That's great. But we really, when we're talking about going from precision to decision, we got to get beyond the averages. We got to use that yield data today, like you've heard us talk about in this presentation, to drive those capital improvements. We've heard the term measure, manage, and improve today, maybe in a different form. But that's really what we do. So we've heard us talk about this all day today, and we showed you 3 fields, 4 fields here today that we've done that on. And kind of how we get at those we want to talk about. Show you what that looks like to wrap things up from a Greenway standpoint today. So we're targeting fields with most of gain, not just lowest yielding. If you're only seeing average yield, you get focused in on that. You start seeing, well, I got a 30 bushel soybean field, I got a 70 bushel. I got to figure out what's wrong in this 30 bushel field. This is a farmer I work with in my territory, and you can see we've got 2 fields highlighted here on a potential return map or chart. This is something you see with our advanced harvest analytics. But the left side blue graph is average yield, and that's ranked across his 10 cornfields. This center section here is profit. Then this is our low acres in that field, and what percentage of the field that is. So, talking about a couple of fields here, you can see, obviously we're going to target these 2, and they're not our lowest yielding. What you see right off the bat, to me, we're hitting right around that break-even point. One lost $1,300 across the whole field. One made about $1,600. 220 bushel corn, we like to think would be a little more profitable than that, but the truth of the matter is we're really not. So target those things so you're going to have a snowball on the return to you. What's going to pay you back the quickest and get you more money so you can do more improvements. So first thing we'll target is that DT16 right there. Like I said, one of the things that really jumped out was that profit. We lost a little money on that field, but the average yield was 220 bushel to the acre on a cornfield. That's a pretty good cornfield. But what we also see, we've got 26% of that field below average, and the average of that low zone was 167 bushels. So we're taking about a 50 bushel hit in that low zone. So something had to go pretty bad wrong. So that jumps off the page. So what do? We turn right to that yield map. Actually got 2 years of data on this field. And you can see what happens right there. That whole northeast corner washed. They actually had dirt moved. Big cut was right here in year one. So that kind of factors into that potential revenue. $7,300. Seldom do you see one that had potential revenue that high. But in this case we did. In year two, when they kind of improved that cut grind a little bit, we got that potential revenue down to $5,150. But you can see the same pattern. Right here, we're losing yield. It's actually so bad in that northeast corner, it didn't harvest any crop right there. It drowned it out so much the combine yield monitor didn't even register flow. So what does that look like? We're still in that managed step now. And here's that field. That's 2/10 contours on this field. Blue is your high, yellow and orange are your lows. So you can see we got a pretty good fall of this field. Everything looks like it kind of wants to go out in this northeast corner where we saw our low. So what's happening right there? Got good primary slope towards our low. Here's where the problem starts. We got a single pipe drain, which is probably the number one problem on this field. But that's kind of hard to fix because everything runs off into that bio in the northeast corner. But you can also see where that arrow's pointing. I said these are 2/10 contours. We've got 1, 2, 3 levees that are lower than our drain. We're talking about water doesn't run uphill too good. So what does that water do? On that 6/10 fall, water sits right there and drowns out whatever crop's there. Rice or corn or beans, when they're sitting there, they're getting their feet wet and they don't like that. So what was our solution to this field? He's got a track hoe. So maybe if he has time this winter and the spring, let's put a 2x2 ditch, 2 foot deep, 2 foot wide, around the east and north borders. Is that going to alleviate all that if we get a huge rain? No, it's not. But instead of that water having to run all the way to the northeast corner, some of it can hold in that ditch, and that's going to direct it to that drain so it can go ahead and get out until he can maybe fix that and get a little bigger pipe. Again, looking at this other field that's right around our break even, usually if we see 14% of the acres below average, we're going to say that's close to success. Below 15% on a furrow irrigated field is pretty good. With shoot for 10, 15% is about a little more realistic. So let's take a look at this one since it was around break even. Same thing, we got a little spot in the southeast corner that drowned out. It's first year farming this field, so we didn't have any data on it going in to really have a good plan that we talked about. Longer rows watered out first because row direction was northwest to southeast. So we had a lot of point rows in this field with a potential revenue of $1,700. Here's what that field looks like. And you can see down in the southeast corner, we've got a lot of slope. Those levees start to stack up a little bit. Everything falls to that corner. So what was happening is that water was hitting that break even or that break point and just piling up, pooling up right at his drain. So we had to do something about that area right there. So what was our solution going to be going into next year? We're going to use pipe planter. And instead of creating the boundary, how it actually runs, going all the way down to that corner, we actually kind of follow and make our boundary go where that yield map starts to show low zone. What that's going to do is cause pipe planter to generate smaller holes on our longest row, so all the water isn't getting down there. You know, it isn't pushing bigger holes all the way to the end. It's going to try to slow that water down somewhat, really adjust that furrow length. To wrap things up, I hope you saw today how we're trying to eliminate, and we did reduce greatly, yield variability related to water stress, and that improves profitability. You guys are spending all the money, a lot of times in furrow irrigated fields, on fungicide, chemicals, fertilizer, but until you fix that water problem, it doesn't matter what foliar you put there, what fungicide you put there, you're still going to have that water problem limiting yield. The name of the game, especially when things are tight, is exploiting all that potential that's in that field. So I want to leave you with the question, on your farm, can these tools help you manage water to optimize yield? Does anybody have any questions about terracotta pipe planter? Like Jeremy said, we'll have the terracotta room down there in the upper lobby. I'll be in there, Glenn will be in there. If anybody wants to come visit about terracotta.
questions? Appreciate y'all.
One other thing, Chair, I wanted to mention, I told you that we would be in this area running some demos. Greenway is one of about 4 or 5 dealers that we're working with across the country. So I can't say enough good about Greenway and the team they have here. You guys are really fortunate to have this level of a dealer to work with and to have partnering with you. So I appreciate their working with us and being willing to embrace this concept and help us any way that we need to take this forward. So with that,
Any other questions?
thank you.
So, I've got a couple quick highlights on both what Jamie had and Shannon had, is that both of the technologies that we talked about, some of the things they talked about, what Jamie presented for 360, that wasn't high tech, was it? Some people would say that's not precision ag. That's where I kind of argue. The 360 yield center, the wide drop technology, is putting your nutrient more precisely where the corn plant needs it. It's not sticking it in the middle of the row. I can't remember the exact number. I think their number was 32% of that nitrogen is not being used when you put it in the middle of the row versus putting it right beside the plant. That's not what people would call great high-tech technology. There's nothing electronic about it. It was just a really good idea that somebody took the initiative to develop. We go all the way from that to what Shannon presented, which is probably on the extreme side of high-tech. Some things that using facial recognition technology is there. Regardless of the two technologies, they're both there to help you do one thing, and that's to be more efficient and be more productive and meet a challenge of your crop production. So if we keep going forward as Greenway, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recognize these things and get them to you guys so they can help in farmer operation. So with that, our next presentation, we'll give you a little bit of time to go to the bathroom, visit a couple of the expo booth areas. Our next presentation will be at 2 o'clock. And that's also dealing with another one of those technologies or one of those problems that you have, which is water management. We're all impacted by it. Every grower in the room is probably impacted by water in some shape, form, or fashion. We got some pretty cool things to show you on that, so please stick around. We'll see you back in here at 2 o'clock.
We'll be back at 2 o'clock live streaming.